Before we continue with the rest of the video, we could use your help. Click that like button to help spread the word about Watchjojo, and also be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. The 5 best video game movies according to Rotten Tomatoes. It's hard to say which tends to be worse, video games based on movies or movies based on video games. Both have their own distinct flaws. Video games based on movies rarely manage to capture whatever people liked about their source material because they don't have the big stars or nuanced storytelling. An additional problem is that, more often than not, they're rush jobs, developed and made quickly in order to be released at the same time as the film. That doesn't always make for the most enthralling gameplay. Movies based on video games have a different set of issues. Even though many of today's most popular video games are designed to look and feel cinematic, the formats remain relatively incompatible. Games utilize plot as a means of taking the player from one interactive section to the next. Movies, on the other hand, need to have constant plot advancement to keep people hooked. Consequently, films based on games are generally working from material that isn't developed in a manner that would sustain a 2-hour cinematic experience. Perhaps not surprisingly, there has never been a movie based on a video game that has gotten a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. They're all rotten. Many of them only score in the single digits of the tomato meter. What follows are the 5 highest rated on the site. The low scores of these best movies will illustrate just how poorly such films are received. There are also 2 instances where the movie earned that rare 0%, meaning that not a single critic liked them. Number 5. Max Payne, 16%. Max Payne is based on the third-person shooter about a cop who turns vigilante and goes after the thugs who wiped out his family. The game has obvious film noir influences, as well as some from the tough and gritty detective novels that were penned by writers like Mickey Spillane. Mark Wahlberg stars in the movie adaptation, which was directed by John Moore. Common criticisms of Max Payne were that, in trying to expand upon some of the game's story points, the plot became too muddled, and that the tame PG-13 rating was at odds with the graphic tone of the game, making Max's revenge mission feel watered down. All this led to a 16% score, which still makes it the 5th best video game movie ever made. Number 4. Street Fighter, 18%. First released in 1987, Street Fighter was an arcade game in which different characters pummeled each other until one collapsed. That's literally all there was to it. This meant that the movie Street Fighter, which came out in 1994, had to invent a lot of story elements, as well as find ways to develop their characters beyond their visual appearances and unique fighting styles. Jean-Claude Van Damme plays Colonel Guile, a military commander who leads the charge to defeat a dictator named Bison, portrayed by the late Raul Julia. Critics liked Julia's campy performance, but felt the story was too thin. If the 18% score sounds pathetic, consider that a 2009 franchise reboot, Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, earned just 6%. Number 3. Resident Evil Apocalypse, 20%. The good news for the Resident Evil franchise is that all 6 installments are among the most highly rated video game movies on Rotten Tomatoes. The bad news is that they all still have lousy scores. Of them, the second, Resident Evil Apocalypse, comes in lowest with 20%. A recurring point made in reviews was that trying to capture the appeal of the game on screen just didn't work. The plot was described as lightweight, and the gory action sequences were deemed overlong and tiresome in their frequency. While many critics felt Mila Jovovich's charisma was a plus, they also complained that RE Apocalypse was clearly designed to appeal to fans of the game rather than to general audiences. Number 2. Lara Croft Tomb Raider, 20%. If there's really one big surprise on this list, it's that Lara Croft Tomb Raider only has a 20% tomato meter score. Unlike many video game movies, it boasts an A-list star, Angelina Jolie, and was a box office hit, earning $131 million in North America and an additional $143 million worldwide. Presumably, audiences liked the film more than critics did. No one took issue with Jolie's casting as Lara Croft. She was celebrated across the board as being the perfect choice for the role. That said, just about everything else in the movie was faulted. Reviews called the story nonsensical and underdeveloped. Some commented that the action scenes felt cribbed from the Indiana Jones pictures, minus the nail-biting suspense. Number 1. Resident Evil Afterlife, 23%. Resident Evil Afterlife is the fourth entry in the series and was the first to utilize 3D. This one has Alice seeking out a safe zone near Los Angeles, where survivors of the outbreak are supposedly getting refuge. All the while, an agent from the evil Umbrella Corporation is tracking her. Most critics agreed on two things. First, the 3D effects in the movie were well done. Second, director Paul W.S. Anderson seemed a little too enamored with devising cool 3D shots at the expense of coherent storytelling and characterization. Only 23% of reviewers liked RE Afterlife, although in fairness, the ones who did like it were very effusive in their praise of its slick style.